Alaris fell. Her crew and the Sisters of Silence are locked in combat with Deathguard when out of the fog emerges Typhus, and from a fallen sister, Saint Celestine rises. Welcome to Blue Rose Minis, and today we are making a trench. So first you want to start off by making a template on a board as to how you want everything to be laid out. Then if you want everything to be precise and line up perfectly, you can go ahead and mark the edges of the popsicle sticks, just trying to get them as straight as possible, as you see me doing here. Depending on how large you want this trench diorama to be will determine the amount of popsicle sticks that you will need. You can of course use any other material. You can use EVA foam, SPF foam, anything that you fancy or that you are very comfortable working with. It all doesn't matter. Next, if you don't have a set tool for clipping wood or cutting wood, any old pair of clippers will work. This is in an old Citadel clippers, typically used for removing the plastic miniatures from the sprues, but with enough pressure and the correct positioning, you can go ahead and snip them off. It does take a little time to get used to the amount of pressure that needs to be applied, so be aware that your hand will hurt for a few minutes while you are fixing and adjusting your hand to the amount of pressure needed to clip the edges. But just go ahead and do this until you have enough of the material that you're working with. If you're working with popsicle sticks, go ahead and make yourself a pretty good decent pile. By the end of this project, you should still have some planks left over for any future projects you might want to use them in. So the next thing that you want to do is measure out the walls for your trench. I went ahead and made my trench 3 popsicle sticks wide, but that is also the height that my husband wanted this trench to be. So just go ahead and cut yourself out a few walls of these. Next, you can go ahead and glue the corner pieces together and go ahead and start applying your popsicle sticks. Now I went ahead and did the support beams at the corner first. Not only does that help measure out how much of the popsicle sticks you will need for the whole project, but it also strengthens the corner just a little bit, but enough for you to be able to work with it. And then you could just proceed to hot glue the rest of the popsicle sticks. Go ahead and save any scraps that have straight edges for this project, because it will help stagger the planks and make it look realistic. Now, the important part when making a trench is you want to be realistic, but these trenches were put up in a matter of days, so they will be messy in construction, and of course they were not very well kept. So if you go ahead, if you've mismeasured or a popsicle stick is wonky in some way, that does not matter. It will add to the effect. And you are just gonna you are just gonna continue this all the way around. Now for a little backstory as to why I'm making this trench. So my husband had this idea for his newest army that he is working on, which is the Death Guard. And he wanted a cool little backstory for them, or something to justify the type of base that he was going to be putting on them. So the bases that he has on his Death Guard miniatures are this kind of muddy texture, like almost as if they're coming through a swamp, or in this case a trench. So having made up his mind that that is what he decided on doing, he set about on trying to build this massive project by himself. Now, my husband isn't a crafter. He's barely becoming a painter. So there was no way I was gonna let him take my materials and waste about half of them trying to get the look and feel of what he wanted. So I just went ahead and decided to take it over, just so that it appears well done. Now, I'm not saying he can't craft, it's just that with this type of project, the amount of skills to be able to pull this off and the amount of patience is something that you just kind of have to learn over time as you create smaller crafts. So that is why I decided that since I'm making this huge diorama trench board, I may as well show you guys the process that I went about. Now, a word of caution. So you see how I'm leaving a little bit of overhang on this section? That is because I did not properly measure out the walls, so it did come out slightly shorter than what I had planned. Now, that's okay, and I'm just clipping them off because I decided that, you know what, I can just bend the wall in a little bit and it will still go with the trench look, because you know, out there in the battlefield, they're not gonna care if they have straight lines or not. So that's what I went ahead and decided. But if you want everything to be symmetrical, then I highly suggest that you measure very carefully for this. If you really don't mind or care, then you can just wing it as I had done. Now what I'm doing is putting in more support beams. And at this point I was just kind of in it. I was in focus mode, and later on my husband informed me that the support beams are where the pallets of wood would usually meet with another, so all of those little jagged lines in between, and it's just like at that point it was glued, it was set, it was done, it was gonna stay there. And throughout this project, you will see me kind of pause and see like another hand come into frame. That is me and my husband discussing exactly what he wants done and if there's anything else I need to add before moving to a next part where I'm not using the little wooden planks anymore. And guys, in this video I am using hot glue, but if you want this to be a little bit more realistic, then you can go ahead and use PVA glue or tacky glue if you want. It will give you more time to work with the material before it actually sets. But my husband wanted to get this done pretty quickly, so that's why I am using hot glue instead. And if you are sensitive to the heat of a hot glue gun or of the temperature of the glue when it comes out, then I advise you use caution when handling the hot glue, because throughout this video you will see me just kind of wipe off extra globs of hot glue away with my finger. That's because to me the hot glue temperature doesn't really bother me. But anyway, moving on to the next step, you're going to go ahead and tear the paper from this diorama. Now the reason why I can do this so easily is because this is a cheap foam board from the dollar store. So it's not really stuck together really well, but once you go ahead and get that paper off, it's a lot easier to work with. The only thing is it doesn't take to pencil marks very well, so you do need to put a little bit pressure. So here you just see me marking out once again where the trench is gonna go. I am doing this because now we're gonna start the wooden planks that they will be walking on. Now go ahead and save both the lengths, the long and the short, because again these trenches are typically made in a hurry, so they're not going to be perfect. And when you start laying down these planks, my husband informed me before I started gluing that they should be staggered, they should have some space in between, like they're not perfectly laid down planks. So just keep that in mind when you're doing this. And again guys, your hand will kind of hate you once everything is said and done, but it will be okay. You will get a nice looking display board, or just you can even use this for a kill team, battle mat, whatever you want. It's up to you really. And I know it's not off camera, but you can see me just kind of placing the board, seeing what I wanted to do with them and seeing how close I want to put them. But as you can see here, my husband is rearranging them for me and telling me that there needs to be more space between them. So now knowing that, I'm just gonna proceed to break up more of these. Now this is why you should make extra of the popsicle sticks when you are straightening out the rounded corners, because you can reuse them in the same project for a different purpose. So once you think you've got enough, you can go ahead and start laying them down. Now here you can kind of rush it, because the more you rush, the more realistic it will become. And I decided to go ahead and place one of the walls just because I needed something to kind of align it a little bit more and know where I was going. And here I'm just flipping it over so you guys can have a better view of what I'm doing. Now, if you wanted to, you could just put a large line of hot glue onto this foam board and just go ahead and stick the floor plates on, but I decided to do it by hand just because it gives you a little bit more time when placing the floorboards. You don't have to rush through it as quickly. So having come to the end of that hallway, I'm just going to go ahead and hot glue the large centerpiece. And you can't really tell in the video because the pencil marks are so light, but I did mess up on the width of the planks just a little bit. That is why you see me change to the smaller ones, just so I can fit that wall in. But as you will see, when I glue that piece on, that the front corner does bend inward ever so slightly, but enough that it's noticeable. But again, I'm not trying to make this perfect. I'm just trying to get this done. So once you're done with the middle row and have the final wall up, you can go ahead and just take any air drying clay or any type of filler material, and just using your finger and some water, just go ahead and smooth it in. And be sure you have a sharp tool just so you can resurface the wood planks a little bit. It doesn't matter if you leave a little bit of this filler, whatever you're using on the plank board, because it will just simulate mud a little bit better. And again, this project is very labor intensive, so if you do want to put more detail in it or just take your time with it, you can go ahead and use PVA or tacky glue and just let it rest overnight to fully set. But if not, you can use the hot glue, but just know that it's a lot more work on your hands because you don't get that extra day to rest just because everything sets up quite quickly. And here is a closer version of what I'm doing. I am just putting it right over the cracks and then spreading it out. A little does go a long way. And then you can see with my tool, I'm just kind of unearthing the wood planks. Now, if you're using air clay like I am, it is a little bit hard to handle, especially when you're taking off the extra from the corners and sides. the rest of it does want to go up with it, especially in large areas and areas that have large gaps in between the wood pallets. But just go ahead and be patient, keep working with it, and you will eventually get a product that you like. So now just kind of leaving the inside of the trench leaving the rest of the trench alone to dry. I am just discussing with my husband how he wants to have these filled in. He decided that he just wanted it hollow with the thing on top. And I made the mistake of disconnecting my hot glue gun, which is why you will see me glue this piece on, take it off, and glue it back on. But yeah, with this you can do the same process. Just go ahead and measure the top out and go ahead and put it on there. Now to make some little details for the trench. Now you can make as many as you want, but I'm just going to go ahead and make one tiny little ladder because the center is where there is going to be a turret gun. So I'm just trying out different tools, seeing the length that I need, deciding that one more should do it, putting that on. And again, guys, this does not need to be perfect. It does not need to be straight. But yeah, you just slap it together like that, real easy. And your ladder is done. You just measure out and clip what you don't need. Now for the sides, you need to go ahead and put sidewalls first before you go ahead and put the top on. And as you can see, I went ahead and just had everything ready beforehand. And for this project, he wanted it to be sloping up from the sea, so that's why you see a sloping piece there. It does have supports underneath, so keep that in mind. But other than that, I thank you for joining me on part 1 on making a trench. I hope you enjoyed, and I know my husband is now a heretic, but that should not stop you from liking and subscribing and putting a bolt gun straight to his head.